So welcome to this seasonal embodied yoga taster session, which is a taste of the program I'm about to launch, or I'm kind of launching it in the marketing sense, and that will start properly on the 1st of January. Though if you join, you will get access to the resources a little bit before that. So I'll do a short, shameless plug as we start. I'm just sharing a screen here. The program is designed to support you in having a daily or regular practice. I often say 5 or 6 days a week. Having a day off is also a form of embodied yoga, having a rest from everything. And it brings together a lot of the tools and techniques that some of you will know from Embodiment Unlimited work, like the 4 elements, seasons and cycles, embodied yoga principles, stroke embodied toolkit, and also all the things that I learned about yoga that I really appreciate, that I think are the most useful things to leading an embodied life in the 21st century, which is proving to be a fairly challenging one at the moment. So it's very much about tuning into and responding to your own innate body wisdom, building your awareness, having lots of tools and techniques to change how you are, as well as knowing how you are. So capacity to change and flow through your life with ease, maybe more often in a flow state, if you know anything about flow states, kind of a state about being deeply present with who you're with and what you're doing, increasing adaptability, resilience, compassion for self and others through weekly bite-sized practices. And there's a list of those there, and I'll send you all this information as well in an email with the recording of the session. And to start the session, I'd like to read you this little quote here, bottom left, which was written by Coleman Barks in response to something Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet, wrote about his spiritual practice. He was a Sufi, the esoteric side of Islam, and he's often quoted in mindfulness and yoga circles. And Coleman Barks, one of his leading translators of Rumi's work, wrote, "Be loyal to your daily practice. Keep working and keep knocking on the door. As you'll remember, it's said in Rumi's most pithy moments that the door we're knocking on opens from the inside." And that for me is a huge part of embodied yoga, is to practice in a way that helps us to respond to how we are in the moment and how we want to be, but also to be much more in tune with what's going on inside of us. And that's often a little bit hidden from our awareness, because we might be so distracted by our thoughts and everything that's going on around us in the world. And so if you've just arrived in the live session, I'm going to give you a taste of what the program involves. And do feel free to do as little or as much of it as you like. If you're using the recording later, you can pause it whenever you like. And you can do most of it seated if standing is a little bit of a challenge at the moment. So see how you go. So the first thing I'd like us to do is to take a very quick body check-in. And for that, it might be useful to look away from the screen or to close your eyes, and to place a hand on the heart or the belly, and bring your attention to yourself, basically asking yourself, how am I right now? And listening to your body to look for the answer, basically. How am I right now? And thoughts will likely pop up too. Can you listen to your body and notice any signs, signals from the body that might inform how you are? Could be as simple as having cold feet. Could be something more complex, like an emotion you weren't aware of so far. And whatever you notice may inform the choices you make as to what you take part in and how you take part in the session. So there's always the what and there's the how. And to illustrate that in a more practical way, inviting you to come to standing. And if you prefer to stay quietly seated, that's totally fine. So again, choose what's kind, what's helpful in the moment. If you're okay to stand up, please do. Move my chair out of the way. And then taking a walk around your space. So what we're doing is walking, or you might still be sitting, and that's okay too. And then notice how you're walking. So it might be fast or slow. It might be on autopilot without much awareness. And you might have already decided to walk in a certain way. Maybe you're walking slowly because you're in pain or you're tired. Maybe you're walking fast because you're impatient, or it's boring to walk slow. So then you can choose how you'd like to walk if you weren't already choosing. So for example, if it's late in the day where you are, you might want to slow down to start to unwind. And really pay attention to your feet on the ground as you walk. If you want to wake yourself up because it's earlier in the day or you've got stuff to do later, you might walk a bit faster and swing your arms more. Being aware of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And of course, this is a very easy practice to bring into your daily life. So you could simply be aware of how you walk to your car or to the car park or through the hallway. If you don't have much time for a formal, dedicated practice time, most of us do some walking every day. And then coming to sit or stand somewhere in your space. And if I was doing this in the morning, it's evening here, but I often do this type of practice looking out the window for a bit of nature connection, maybe some sunlight on my face. So if it's still daytime where you are, you might like to do that. If you're inside, you can still choose a view, maybe other than the Zoom screen. You don't have to see me all the time. You might want to look at a pleasant picture on your wall. So where the gaze rests can be part of the choices we make. And if you spend a lot of time online, you get sort of tired eyes from it, and really recommend not looking at the screen all the time. And we're coming to what's actually a Qigong stance. So you can have your feet a bit wider than hip width apart, like mine are, and your knees very slightly bent. So from the side, it looks like this, very slightly bent. And then you can bring the back of one hand or both hands to your back and stroke down with the intention of relaxing your lower back and releasing your tailbone down. And that can encourage the pelvis to come into a neutral position. So quite often when we stand, we might be slightly overarching the back or tucking the tailbone under, but doing neither, basically. So the bowl of the pelvis is in a neutral position. And if you're sitting, you can tune into your sitting bones, really finding that balance through the pelvis in a seated pose. And then we can gently shake the hands. And you can do that seated or standing. You can be a bit more vigorous if that's comfortable, or you can be very gentle. And if you're standing, you can also involve a little bouncing at the knees. So the whole body bounces up and down a little bit. And check if there's anywhere in the body that isn't bouncing along. So sometimes I hold a lot of tension around my neck and shoulders. So it's helpful for me to encourage my head to wobble about a bit as well. If there's anywhere for you where you're noticing you're kind of holding yourself a bit stiffly, see if you can let that go. And this can help to bring us a little bit away from the thoughts, the hamster wheel of thinking, into the body. And it also helps me to imagine that I'm shaking things down into my feet, into my hands, a bit like shaking out a duvet, getting the feathers into the corners, getting the stuffing in a beanbag into particular places, clearing the head a little bit. You can lean forward slightly to ease the middle and upper back. And then pausing and stepping the feet a bit closer together so they're more or less underneath your hips. And noticing the sensations in the body. Perhaps you're feeling a little more tingling, activation. More signs of aliveness. And then interlacing the fingers and noticing how you've done that. So this is one of those little habitual things, a bit like folding your arms. We usually fold our arms a certain way. It's the same arm on top. It's the same with the fingers. I always do it automatically with my left thumb on top, unless I think about it. And then I can change it to having my right thumb on top. So just moving the thumb and the fingers up or down, depending on how you look at it. So you're interlacing in the way that feels a bit strange. Embodied yoga can help us to get out of these little patterns, bringing a new balance to the body. And then if it feels okay, you could take your hands above your head. And if that doesn't feel okay, you can always release your arms by your side again. So if you've got shoulder issues, be gentle with yourself. And you could see if you can straighten your arms again comfortably. This is like my comfortable place between here and there. If I straighten more, I feel some tension creeping up into my neck. And then taking a little side stretch from side to side. Now, often in yoga, you get told how and when to breathe. And there's useful reasons for that. And sometimes it feels a bit kind of too bossy to tell people exactly when to breathe. But with something like this, you could choose to breathe in as you're straight up and out when you go into the side stretch. Up to you. You can also focus on the movement alone. And maybe you notice one side of the body is a bit tighter than the other. You could do an extra stretch on that side if you notice that. And then when you're ready, coming back to the center, releasing the arms, having a little shoulder roll, and another shake to relax the shoulders. And then taking the feet a bit wider apart again, this time about a yoga mat width. And once again, you can bend your knees a little to focus on releasing the pelvis onto the legs in that neutral position. You could do another little stroke down the back. Sense that your tail, if you had a tail, an imaginary tail, is hanging down towards the floor. And the knees bending also engages the leg muscles a bit more, so slightly more strengthening. And I'll guide a centering movement which has different stages. So you can just stay with the first stage if that's all you want to do. And you can also follow through the stages and towards the end combine them. So first movement is to bring the backs of the hands in front of the midline of the body, around about the navel area, or the pubic area. And then you can keep the movements small. That's one way of making things less intense. So bringing the hands up, following the midline, and then separating them at about heart level out to the side, then turning the palms down and completing the movement back to the beginning. Doing that a couple more times. Circling back to the center of the body. Keeping the movement relatively small. You can add a conscious practice with the eyes, the gaze. Not just what we're looking at, but also how we're looking at it. And this relates to awareness in meditation as well. So first, looking down towards the hands and seeing the detail of your hands, maybe some veins, your knuckles, jewelry, nails. This is a focused gaze, an eye for detail gaze. And that goes with a concentrated awareness. And then as your hands go up and out to the side, you can wriggle your fingers a little bit and see if you can see both hands from the corners of your eyes. And that's taking you into peripheral vision, which goes with a more open awareness, softer gaze. And then completing the circle, going back to the concentrated gaze. We're doing that a few times. You don't need to keep wriggling your fingers unless you want to. Having that sense of the gaze, the awareness opening up, and then coming back to the detail, refocusing and opening up. In embodied meditation, we cultivate both of these capacities, focus and openness. Both are useful in our lives as well. And you can let that one go. And consider making the movements a little bit bigger, if it feels good. Involving the head and neck a bit more, looking up as the arms go up, looking down as the arms go back down. Maybe lifting the breastbone a little, going towards a backward bend in the spine. And this is a useful point to bring in the breath if you want to breathe in, taking a deep breath in as you go up and take the arms out. And then a slow breath out when you bring your arms down and complete the circle. So big in-breath and back bend is quite energizing. And then a slow out breath and slight forward bend is calming. So we can calmly energize ourselves. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. You can deliberately deepen the breath if it feels good. And if you want to, you can add back in the open awareness and the focused awareness. When next bring your arms up, you can hold the hands up as if receiving something from above. Your elbows are a bit higher, it's a bit more effort, lower, less effort. So see where you want to be. And this is almost embodied yoga principles, inspiration pose. Receiving something from outside of ourselves as inspiration. So I'm hoping you'll receive some inspiration for your daily practice today. And as well, maybe some inspiration to consider my program. But maybe there's something else that you would like to get from here, from this practice. What might you like to receive? And then taking the arms down by your side, bending the knees if you're standing, pressing the hands down as if you're trying to push yourself up from a seat, something like that. And you'll feel your core engage a little bit here in the lower belly. And this is Earth pose from Embodied Yoga Principles. You can take your gaze down to the earth as well. And feel the strength and supportiveness in the body. And you can consider for a moment how your embodiment practice or yoga practice supports you in your life and how that's helpful. And notice how it is to come out of support pose. Sometimes feels like a relief if you've been doing a lot of supporting, especially supporting others. And having a little bit of a wriggle, loosening your knees, shaking that posture off, as it were. Good. And taking a pause in sitting or standing and noticing how you are. Maybe slightly invigorated or calmer, maybe inspired. And then inviting you to join me in a meditation. You can sit on a chair or on the floor. Sitting is best for this one, only because there is a bit of movement involved too, which can be useful as a starting point. Otherwise, you could also lie down or stand, and the program will involve lying down and standing meditations and walking meditations as well. So if you are not normally so keen on sitting still, that's okay. There'll be lots of other options. A bit bright, and a little bit. So settling down however you would like to sit. And just taking my slippers off so my feet are more comfortable. So however you're sitting, being comfortable is very useful. Otherwise, the discomfort in the body becomes a distraction. Now, if you're in some physical pain that is inevitable at the moment, of course, in meditation, you can work with that, just like intrusive thoughts that keep popping up. So we're practicing as part of this, having a kind of patient and kind attitude towards difficulty. But it doesn't mean that we create additional difficulty by forcing our legs to be in a full lotus position or anything like that. And doing what's kind and what brings ease to the body. So to start off the meditation, another kind of a bit of a shaking practice, and this one is to let go of some expectations or any kind of taking our meditation too seriously, which I learned from my Buddhist teacher, Sokni Rinpoche, who's just written a book with the emotional intelligence guy, Daniel Goleman. I think he's about to become quite famous. So this is one of his practices. It starts with shaking the hands and the head. Move your head from side to side. Again, you can be more vigorous if it's comfortable or gentler if not. And you can also pull some funny faces. So that helps with the not taking it all too seriously. Making some sounds if you like, sticking your tongue out. A bit like yoga's lion's breath. And maybe thinking, oh, could I do with taking things a little bit less seriously in my life sometimes? I certainly could. And the next stage is to bring our hands up a bit like, all right, fair enough, I give up. Sort of like hands up as if you've been arrested, but it's also that, right, I surrender. I surrender to life not going how I want it all the time. I surrender to my meditation being just as it is. And then taking a deep breath in with that. And on the exhale, I'm going to invite you to let your hands land on your lap, maybe with a bit of a slap. And then we'll have a moment of silence after. So taking a deep breath in. And when you're ready, a strong exhale and dropping the hands. Maybe the landing of the hands with the slap creates a bit of an afterburn. It smarts a little bit, as we would say in English. And the combination of these three things, shaking, surrendering, and then dropping it with this strong physical sensation, can help us to kind of cut through repetitive thoughts, intrusive thoughts, distractions, and help us to become really present in the moment. So let's try it again. I'll talk you through it. Being as silly as you like, moving as much as you like. Silly sounds welcome. All the mics are muted anyway. Funny faces, only me, that's being recorded. And when you're ready, taking that big inhale, hands up, and dropping it. Noticing the pause. It might just be for a brief moment that everything stops, including the mind pausing for a moment. The awareness is there. Perhaps there's a brief moment of clarity or quietness, and before normal, ordinary thoughts and distraction arises again. So you can do this as a preparation for meditation, and sometimes as a reset during. Though there is also a value to just observing the thoughts, the distractions, the diversions. That's also part of meditation. So I tend to do it before and not during, but you could bring it in every now and again. So let's do it once more, and then I'll start to guide just a 3 or 4 minute meditation practice, checking the time. So we can have another little shake. Oh. When you're ready, taking that deep breath in and then dropping it. Through a pause, a silence, noticing the connection between your body and the ground and your seat. Noticing the breath and where you feel the breath in the body. Expanding your awareness to have a sense of the whole of your skin, your outline. Where your sense of touch meets the world around you. Maybe there's a very subtle sense of the breath creating waves, little ripples of movements on the surface of the body, on the skin. becoming aware of the space around you. Opening your eyes. And then stretching, moving the body in any way that you like to complete the meditation. Very short meditation. If you were sitting cross-legged, you might like to massage your knees for a moment. In the next practice, I'm going to move a bit closer to my screen because I want you to be able to see my hands. And for you, for this one, it will be useful to see the screen. So being aware of that. Other than that, you can do it seated, standing, or lying down. Closer. Excellent. So this is a hand movement sequence, which is very meditative. And I use it to focus on intention on something I want to nourish or grow. And it starts off with the palms together and the thumbs just on the inside of the palms. So you've got a little bit of a gap between your hands. And in that gap, I often imagine I hold something very kind of fledgling, like a fledgling bird, a young bird that isn't quite ready to fly yet. Or I imagine it as a cocoon. A butterfly is going to emerge. It could also be a flower. It's called the lotus bud hand gesture, one of its names. And so it could be a flower that's still in seed form or bud form, that's yet to flower. So it's that kind of sense of protecting something that's still a little fragile, not fully formed. It could be the beginnings of an idea, a creative idea, project. It could be, you could imagine that you're protecting a young being. I've seen this sequence in a pregnancy yoga book, for example, so it could relate to a person you want to nurture or an animal, as well as an idea or a project. If you'd like to bring something to mind, you can, or you can simply focus on the movements and enjoy, hopefully, the movements. And the first stage is to open the palms, a bit like the pages of a book. And still a little protective, revealing the beginnings of this thing, idea, whatever it is you're nurturing, to the light. And then bringing the backs of the hands together and the fingers towards the chest. Bringing it to your heart. And then kind of testing it a little bit by bringing it away from you into the world. And bringing it back to your heart because it might need some more nurturing. Going back to the protective open palms. And then imagining it flourishing, blossoming, creating the full lotus flower gesture. And then a sense of letting it go into the world. The bird flies, the butterfly emerges, and it's set free. And we can return to the bud as well. So now let's do it once more. Now you've got some idea of how it goes. And perhaps you can do it with a little more focused intention on something specific if you want to. Opening the palms, bringing the hands to the heart and down and out, and then reversing. Open palms again. and the blossoming of the idea or whatever it is you want to nurture. And then releasing it into the world. In terms of seasons, this could be a good practice for the spring, but also for the autumn, when in the Northern Hemisphere we plant our bulbs. And also just at the start of developing something new. And this all really relates to cycles and seasons. So, almost finished, so let's have a couple of minutes of resting. Getting more comfortable. If you've got a comfortable place ready to lie down, you could lie down for a couple of minutes. See how you feel. And you can embody this motivation for relaxation by taking a few pa breaths, which is basically breathing in and then breathing out with a sound. And it's also breathing out as if you're misting up a mirror or a window. Breathing in and then breathing out. It can be very gentle and quiet. Three or so of these breaths might be enough. And then letting your breath return to normal. And allow your body to rest down and back, maybe leaning against the back of your chair, resting on the ground. Closing your eyes for a moment if you want to. And internally saying yes to resting. It could just be the word yes or yes in your own first language, your mother tongue. Ja. In Dutch. Yes, I rest. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. And noticing how that is for you right now. Might be a nice pause before you continue with your day. Might be much needed. Maybe you feel restless, full of energy. And being patient, accepting if you can, kind towards whatever you're experiencing. And if you're ready to move, you could start with some gentle fingers and toes movements, a bit like roots or flowers growing towards the light. Maybe bursting into a bigger stretch to wake up if that's what you need. And again, you can be more gentle. You could stay quiet for longer. You could pause if you're watching the recording. Thank you for joining me, some of you joining me again. I hope it was another useful session for you. And if you're watching the recording, you have had the email with all the links. If you're here live, I'm going to stop the recording in case you have any comments or questions. And yeah, so do take care of yourself, especially if you realized you need something during the session. And please, if you can, take the time to provide it for yourself.